Handheld gaming has come a long way. Retro fans, Android gamers, and emulation nuts were really all waiting for something that feels premium without breaking the bank. Enter the Anbernic RG557, the new flagship in Anbernic's lineup with a great AMOLED screen, a monster chipset for power under the hood, and promises of PS2, GameCube, and even Wii U emulation. It looks like it might just tick all the boxes. So let's get to the real test. How does it feel, perform, and hold up when you actually use it? And yes, we're doing a giveaway, don't you worry. Details are at the end. Let's dig in. Ergonomics. The RG557 features a 5.48-inch AMOLED screen, which is at 1920 by 1080 resolution at 60 Hz. Colors are vibrant, contrast is deep, and the blacks are nice and rich. It's one of the standout features among Android handhelds for display quality at this price point. That said, some users report screen flicker at lower brightnesses, which could be a problem for sensitive eyes. But I haven't had any issues with the gameplay though. Now, it was kind of a pain having to swap frame rates to make sure I didn't get any flicker while filming this, but that's about it. Durability. It's got a shell that's light, 347 grams, and an ergonomic grip / back bump outs that make it comfortable in your hands, especially for longer gaming sessions. Now, it does have a pretty plasticky finish. While it looks nice, this thing is a fingerprint magnet, and it's really just always dirty. This thing is hard to keep clean, but I think that's the choice of plastic here and not a slight on its durability. I think it feels good in your hands. And you know what? The RGB lights are nice. I think it just adds a touch to this device to make it look cool. Now, the overall feeling for this device is more utilitarian and not premium. It's here to do some Android gaming and not much else. So what about the battery? It's equipped with a 5,500 milliamp hour battery. Now, Anbernic claims up to 8 hours of battery life during usage, but in practice, it's going to be much less depending on your workload. Something like PlayStation 2 games is going to push anywhere from like 2 to 3 hours, while if you're streaming, you're going to get closer to that 8-hour playback window. Now, if you're trying to play something like Destiny, you might get closer to that 2-hour mark depending on the brightness of your screen. But if you're streaming games, you'll get quite a bump due to the lower power draw, which is nice. So what can we plug in? It supports USB-C with DisplayPort out at 1080p. It's got Wi-Fi 6E, Bluetooth, headphone jack, an SD card slot, and 256 gigs of onboard storage. Now, there's active cooling in this as well, but it kind of looks like the Switch 1 active cooling situation, where it's kind of pulling in through a vent on the back and pushing it out the top, which I think works pretty well. All in, there's not much changes for the hardware for this revision, but for a starter handheld, I think they do a really good job of giving all the inputs and outputs you need for a regular device. Nothing extra, but everything you need.
Oh, welcome to Clicky vs. Squishy. In this corner, we have
Face ABXY buttons are familiar Anbernic style, squishy and not clicky. Shoulder buttons and triggers also get praised for a decent feel and size while being Hall effect. Now over to the D-pad. It is very squishy and works well, though the material's slick and movement or fast inputs can sometimes slip. Now for joysticks, we have capacitive analog sticks, anti-magnetic interference, high resolution. That's at least what Anbernic tells me. If you have large hands or want wide stick travels, this one might feel cramped for you, but it's a knockout for the squishy buttons this time around, as most of the ones that matter are squishy and not clicky. Back to you, Regular Davey. Now, on to performance. Out of the box, this is running Android 14. The UI is clean with customizable options, fan controls, performance toggles, RGB lighting, and all that good stuff that we've seen from Anbernic over the years. The front end looks nice, and emulators come preloaded, additionally with the Google Play services. I think they did a good job of making this a emulators first when you want it on, and not emulators if you want to get into that Android gaming. So what about the performance? Well, the Dimensity 8300 gives strong performance. Android titles run nicely, and multitasking works well switching between games. But with emulation, PS2 and GameCube 3D titles cook on here. Graphics look great, a bit of upscaling, and even some Switch emulation, not to be seen, but just a little bit to be heard. Emulation supports consoles up through the PS1, PSP, PS2, GameCube, Wii U, somewhat depending on game and settings, but it also supports all of Android, like the new Destiny Rising game, which is a great option. This game has recently come out, and I was a big Destiny fan, and since that's kind of dropped off the face of the earth like a hot potato. I'm trying this one out, and so far I like it, but you can definitely see it's not meant to be scaled. This is definitely going to be used on a small screen. I would keep this between 5 and 8 inches. So if you're looking for a device that it looks really good on and runs great on, this Anbernic device, the 557, does really well for it. In addition to that, we have access to all of the streaming services, local remote play, and just a ton of native Android games. So let's move on to a pros and cons list. It's got an excellent display, a vibrant AMOLED 1080p panel, but only at 60 Hz. The internals are as powerful as I need them to be. The Dimensity 8300 with RAM and storage does great here. It's also got a very strong feature set for the price point that this is at, which is around the $250 mark. It's also got comfortable ergonomics, back bump outs, a grip, and despite its size, it does really well in the hand. And this has got great expandability. You've got SD card slots, tons of different emulator options, and Android just really does well on a device like this. But time for the cons. It's got pretty small joysticks. It's not ideal for larger hands or precise analog control, but you get used to it over time. Battery life drops significantly under 3D/emulation stress. You're going to be looking around 2 hours if you're really stressing this thing hard. Some of the plastic bits feel cheap, slick, and prone to smudges, especially the transparent versions, which I have here. You can tell this thing was hard to keep clean. Users have noted GPU compatibility and driver issues have been coming out, so I wanted to add this here. I haven't had any issues, but a lot of people in the community have had some issues with GPU compatibility. They've run updates and I really haven't had any issues since. In addition to that, it's got pretty loud triggers and buttons for some people, but I thought the buttons and everything was fine. I generally like a harder click than not a squish. So let's look at the competition next. There are 3 handhelds I'd like to compare this to. The Retroid Pocket 5. It's often cheaper, compact, and with snappier controls in some respects, but the display for this one and the performance, especially in 3D, lag behind the RG557. But the Retroid Pocket 5, for a cheaper price point, does come in at a smaller competitor to the 557. Ioneo also makes devices like the Pocket Air, which come in at around the same size as this, with premium materials and sometimes OLEDs with better displays. This one's a strong competitor in feel and polish, but often much more expensive, and sometimes less emulation grounded, meaning it's more of an Android experience than logging in, pressing the Anbernic button, and getting all of your emulators right there. They are one to consider though in this size category. And other things like the Odin 2 Portal come in at around the same price category. They're a little bit more, about $80 more for the base model, but the actual screen is a lot bigger. The ergonomics and the fit and finish of the Odin 2 is way higher than the RG557, but at that premium price point. So if you're looking for an upgrade but around the same category, that would be my option for replacing the 557 if you're going for something just a hair bigger. Overall, if you value display, comfort, and being able to load up emulators and play retro/modern Android games, the RG557 does well and does all of it. But if you want max precision in sticks, long battery life, or a more premium build quality, competitors like the Odin 2 Portal may win depending on your trade-offs and budget. I think personally all the ones that I just recommended are pretty cool. So, after real use with the Anbernic RG557, here's where I kinda landed. This is one of the most capable Android plus retro emulator handhelds out right now. I think this is a great starting spot for anyone who hasn't gotten into the Android gaming scene yet, and maybe has an iPhone and hasn't even seen the Google Play Store. There's a ton of games on there that have been coming out for the last few years, and I'm really enjoying them. But just remember, this device isn't perfect. Joystick size, GPU compatibility quirks, plastic finish, and battery underload are trade-offs you'll need to think about, or choose one of the other Android gaming options if you're into the market. Now, if you're deeply into retro games and want Android and emulators all in one device, and you don't mind tweaking a few things with the 557, it's a very strong pick from me. I think this is Anbernic's flagship for a reason. I think they've done a really good job with this one. I just might not get the clear version, even though it does look very cool. And remember, we give a recently reviewed handheld away each month, so to be considered, hit subscribe and like. Drop a comment down below answering what device do you want to see next in a review. Also, if you're an Android gamer, let me know what you're playing so I can have other games to play. Thanks for tuning in. Davey out.